Today's lesson is Left Turns Only, Why We Race Counterclockwise. Hello everyone, I'm Mike.
And I'm Sam.
And today we're looking at a very interesting article about a very interesting question that in all my years, I think I have never thought about. Have you ever thought about why we run counterclockwise in track meets and on the athletics field?
No, I have actually never, ever thought of this even once. And I ran track for a very long time.
You were on the school athletics or track team?
Yes,
and
so
gosh.
I did all of these races. I ran all those races, and I always ran to my counterclockwise, to my left. I never thought about why.
It's one of those things. It's like, why are there 5 people on a basketball team? I don't know, there just are. Why is a soccer game 90 minutes long? It just is. But yeah, so do you think if you were running track and the coach or whoever said, okay, we're going to run the other way, we're going to turn right instead of turning left, do you think that would be a simple thing, or do you get the feeling that after a few minutes you go, this feels weird?
I would think it would feel very weird the very first turn. It wouldn't even be after a couple minutes. It'd be like I'd start running and then I'd have to try to, I can't even think of it now. Like trying to turn to my right would feel so weird.
And also, actually, where we work, there's a track across the street. And I'm thinking even during the day when you see the old ladies and the people just exercising, they all run counterclockwise.
Oh, yeah, they really do.
It's just a natural thing that we do. Isn't that strange? Now, when we say counterclockwise, we should sort of explain this is the way that the hands on a clock don't go. This is the opposite way. So imagine the hands on a clock, instead of going from 12 to 1 to 2 to 3, they go from 12 to 11 to 10 to 9. That is counterclockwise, or against counter the way clocks usually run. So yeah, on a running track, people run counterclockwise. Very interesting question. We'll have some surprising answers for you, but first, let's listen to the first part of the article.
Left turns only. Why we race counterclockwise. Have you ever wondered why competitive races always seem to go counterclockwise? The answer likely comes down to a mix of tradition and biology.
大家好，第一部分介绍片语 come down to 加名词或 VING 指归结为某个原因，追根究底，在于点点点。例如 The secret of Brett's success comes down to hard work and dedication. Brett 的成功秘诀总归说来是因为勤奋和投入。或者 The decision came down to choosing between passion and stability. 这项决定最终是在热情与稳定之间做选择。继续看到名词 biology 表示生物学，例如 Charles is majoring in biology. Charles 主修生物。或是 Sharon teaches biology at a university. Sharon 在一所大学教生物。
All right, and we are back. So here we are at the beginning of our article, and we're setting it up with a few different questions. The first one reads, have you ever wondered why competitive races always seem to go counterclockwise? That's kind of what we were talking about in the introduction. Maybe you guys are much smarter and much more curious than us, but if you've ever wondered why, you've ever sort of just asked yourself a question and go, that's interesting, and I don't have an answer, but I'm kind of curious. So we're wondering why competitive races always seem to go counterclockwise. Yes, I guess if you're just practicing or exercising, you can run any way you want around the track. But if you're in an official sports meet, if you're in the Olympics or even a school race, these would be competitive races. And something that is competitive means that people are competing. They're trying to beat other people. At the end, you will have a winner. Someone will come first. Someone will come second. Someone will come last. There have to be losers. But it basically means we're competing. We're trying to win something, and maybe at the end, like at the Olympics, you might get a medal or a trophy or a prize. It's not just for fun, it's a bit more serious than that.
Yes, and so we see this question, why do they always seem to go counterclockwise? And then the next part of the article says, the answer likely comes down to a mix of tradition and biology. Okay, so we kind of talked a little bit about, it seems like that's just how it's always been done in this tradition of what we kind of see and think of when we're racing. But also it says it has something to do with biology. I'm sure you've heard it, especially if in your school and all that kind of stuff, is biology is the study of life. Bio meaning life, and this L-O-G-Y or sometimes O-L-O-G-Y means the study of. So you see that ending in lots of different words like geology and all that kind of stuff. And so we have biology. Now, this is kind of interesting because what about biology could make you want to turn counterclockwise? Why does that have something to do with your body?
Yeah.
So could be quite an interesting article.
Yeah, the tradition part I understand, but you're right. The biology part, like, would we die if we ran the other way? Is it going to poison us or something? Very interesting question, and we're going to have some interesting answers for you starting off in the next part of the article. So let's listen to that now.
In the first modern Olympics, runners actually ran clockwise around the track. However, many athletes protested, saying they had been trained to run the opposite way. This led to Olympic races being run counterclockwise, beginning in 1908. As a result, a global standard was set, and left-turn racing became the norm. So why does turning left feel more natural? Over the years, many theories have been put forward, some of which are stranger than others.
第二部分看到动词 protest， 它的意思是抗议、反对。例如 People have been protesting outside the factory against the pollution it produces. 人们一直在工厂外抗议其产生的污染。也可以说 Jenny protested her father's decision. Jenny 抗议爸爸的决定。另外补充这个字当名词时念作 protest， 指抗议活动、抗议游行。造个例句 The students held a protest against government inaction regarding climate change. 学生们抗议政府对气候变迁无所作为。再造一句 I ignored Lucy's protests and gave her the present anyway. 我无视 Lucy 的反对，还是把礼物送给她。
All right, we are back. So yeah, we're going to find out about why people run counterclockwise or opposite the way a clock usually runs when they're running on a track. And no surprise, we're probably going to go back a long way to the ancient Greeks, or maybe even the Olympics that they invented, but the more modern form. It says in the first modern Olympics, so this is the one from 1896, I believe, was the first modern Olympics, runners actually ran clockwise around the track. Oh, okay. So they weren't doing it the way we do, even just slightly more than 100 years ago at that first Olympics. Now, we know the Olympics is a big global games. Everyone meets every 4 years for the Summer Olympics and the Winter Olympics, and they will have many competitions in many different sports. The most recent one, of course, was just last year, 2024, in Paris. I think Taiwan did quite well. Chinese Taipei, as it's officially called, did quite well. And yeah, it's a big global sports event, along with the World Cup, probably the most popular world sports event. And, of course, track and field athletics is a big part of that, right? Runners running on the track, 200 meters, 400 meters, that kind of thing. So they actually, though, back in 1896 at the first Modern Olympics, they ran clockwise. So the way a clock normally runs, opposite to the way that we do it now. And that seemed to cause a problem.
Yes, and as we see in the next part of the article, it says, however, many athletes protested, saying they had been trained to run the opposite way. Okay, so now we see that at this first Olympics, they were running on clockwise and going the way that the clock normally goes and kind of doing all these right turns. But there were a lot of athletes saying, hey, wait a minute, that's not how I was training to run. And now I feel like I'm all out of sorts because you might think that it's a simple thing to run one way and then compete running the other way. But for an athlete who has been training and training and training, it probably feels very weird and kind of off balance. And so they protested. If you protest, you are saying that something is not the way that you want it to be. And so you are arguing with whoever, or you're standing there saying, hey, this is not a good idea. We should change this. We need to fix it. And so in this way, the athletes all got together and said, we don't like that we're turning clockwise. We would like to go the other way since we've all been training that way. So they did some form of protest. They all talked to the people in charge, or they had little
Complained.
signs and they complained and said, no, I don't want to run to my right. I want to run to my left. And so, well, it must have made some difference because all these years later, now we're running counterclockwise.
There you go. It makes you wonder why the organizers of the first Olympics made them run in that clockwise fashion when everyone apparently was used to running counterclockwise. But as Sam said, they protested and things changed. So it said this led to Olympic races being run counterclockwise beginning in 1908. So it actually took like 3 Olympics.
Yeah.
I think 1896, 1900, 1904. They were running clockwise, I assume, the whole time. But finally, by 1908, they listened to the athletes and they ran counterclockwise starting in that year. So because of that, or as a result, a global standard was set and left-turn racing became the norm. So yes, often when things happen in the Olympics, or they're sort of established as a rule in the Olympics, a lot of people will just follow that rule because for many athletes, they want to reach the Olympics, so we might as well follow their rule. So a norm, that became the norm. You notice norm is very similar to the longer word normal, something that is normal, it's common, it's usual, it's expected. So when we say it's a norm, it's kind of like saying it's the standard, it's the normal thing. So here's the question, so why does turning left feel more natural? Why had all those athletes been running that way, and why did that become the norm after those few years of protests?
Yes, and so it says, over the years, many theories have been put forward, some of which are stranger than others. So again, this kind of looks like, okay, we all just feel like we want to run counterclockwise, but nobody really knows why. So of course, in science, when you have a hypothesis, when you have a theory, when you have this like, what is the answer to this question, then everybody's going to come up with different experiments or different thoughts or different theories to kind of answer or solve this problem. So as we see, it says that there's been several that have been put forward or kind of brought out that people might look at and decide, is this true or is this not true? Does this have any basis in reality, or is it just something someone totally made up? And it says some of them are stranger than others. So again, if you've got a lot of people putting out a lot of different theories, some of them might be kind of strange.
Well, I can't wait to learn about the strange ones that have been put forward or suggested. We'll get into those, and we'll maybe try to find out what the real reason is, or maybe we won't. Very mysterious, very interesting. So let's keep running counterclockwise and listen to the 3rd paragraph in our article.
Some say that the heart's position in the body makes it easier to race counterclockwise. Others claim that because most people read from left to right, it feels more natural for us to watch athletes run from left to right. Still others believe that the Earth's rotation gives left-turning runners an advantage. The most likely explanation, though, is simply that most people are right-footed, meaning that their right leg is stronger. This enables them to push off and take longer strides when turning left. Regardless of the reason for it, racing counterclockwise is now a matter of tradition. So next time you hit the track, remember, left turns only.
第3部分介绍名词 explanation 表示解释说明，可以说 No one could give an explanation for how the fire started in the new house. 没有人可以解释那栋新房子是怎么起火的。另外补充这个字的动词 explain E-X-P-L-A-I-N explain。 造个句子 Jeffrey explained why he was late. Jeffrey 解释了他迟到的原因。另外一句 Keith explained the rules of the game. Keith 解释了这个游戏的规则。最后看到名词 stride， 它表示步幅、大步、一大步的距离。可以说The length of someone's stride partly depends on how long their legs are. 一个人的步幅长短部分取决于他们的腿有多长。最后一个例子 Terry has a very long stride when he runs because his legs are so long. Terry 跑步时步幅很长，因为他的腿太长了。
Okay, we are back. So we're trying to figure out why it just feels more natural for athletes to run and turn left on the running track or run counterclockwise. Well, let's find out. It says some say that the heart's position in the body makes it easier to race counterclockwise. Okay. So this is kind of getting into the biology that we mentioned in the first paragraph there. It's about your body and the way it's made, your physical organs, your physiology, the things that make a human a human. And one of those things is that the heart's position could be what makes it easier to race counterclockwise. We all know that the heart is kind of just to the left of center in your chest. So you're kind of running with your heart on the inside of the track. But there's other ideas too.
Yes, and that reason sounds like it's such a small little thing that can it really make such a big difference? Well, that's also why there are other reasons than just this one. And so we have others claim that because most people read from left to right, it feels more natural for us to watch athletes run from left to right. And this, I think, is a kind of interesting, but also it makes a lot of sense that the way the runners would run is the best way for the watchers to watch, because I feel like there are so many things about sports that it's for the audience. You know, we want the audience to have fun and watch this event, and so if it felt really awkward for the audience, they might not enjoy it as much. When you're watching a race and you're watching them run, it does feel a lot more natural to watch them go from the left to the right, because that just is kind of a natural progression from the beginning to the end, because most things start on the left and end on the right. So I feel like that makes sense, that it kind of feels more natural in that way.
That's an interesting one, but you're right. Maybe as spectators, and today, especially in the modern world, maybe more people do read from left to right. That there is another theory for you. Still others believe that the Earth's rotation gives left-turning runners an advantage. Okay. That's very interesting. So the way that the Earth turns, the Earth actually, it's true, it also turns from left to right. It turns counterclockwise. So the rotation of the Earth is moving in the same way that the runners are moving as they turn left around a track, and that gives them an advantage. It makes it slightly easier. Well, when we talk about rotation, this is a great word to use because everything running around a track, a clock going the opposite way, the Earth spinning, this is all rotation. It's spinning around. If you want a good example of rotation in humans, think of a ballet dancer spinning, or one of those figure skaters, or maybe a record player or a CD. As it spins around, it is rotating, and that's the noun form rotation. All right, so there's three interesting ones, but I think the fourth one, at least the article seems to be quite confident that this could be the best one.
Yes, and so it says the most likely explanation, though, is simply that most people are right-footed, meaning that their right leg is stronger. So we've got this word explanation. This comes from the verb explain, or to just say what something is clearly. So again, we've already seen different possible explanations, but this one is the most likely. So according to the article, they think that this one is probably the real reason that everybody is racing counterclockwise, and that's because people are right-footed. And when you say somebody is right-footed, it means that that is their dominant side or their dominant foot. You can also say they are right-handed if they write and draw and throw with their right hand, as opposed to being left-handed or left-footed. So again, if you are right-footed, then your right side is just in general stronger. So as you are turning, you are pushing with your right leg. That makes sense. That seems to make you run faster or be able to handle the turns a little bit better. So that kind of makes sense. I would guess, at least as far as what we've read so far, that does sound like the most likely explanation.
I think it does. You're right, and you're right. Only 10% of people are left-handed or left-footed, so that would be most people in the world. This enables them, it says, to push off and take longer strides when turning left. If your right leg is stronger, it'll allow you to push off with it when you start the race, right? Because that's the leg you'll probably use. And then once you're running, you take longer strides when you're turning left. A stride is basically one one step. When you're walking along, you are striding along. And if you measure the distance from one foot, the back foot, to the right foot, as you're in that middle of that walking motion, that is a stride. If you're trying to exercise, you'll stride much longer and faster than if you're just having a casual walk down the street. So longer strides, longer steps when turning left. I think that sounds like it makes best sense of all the other reasons we've heard. Regardless of the reason for it, we read racing counterclockwise is now a matter of tradition. It is definitely the norm these days. So, next time you hit the track, remember, left turns only. I think that's the official rule. Plus, if you're just exercising at the schoolyard, you might avoid bumping into everyone if you're not going the right way, right? If you're turning right the whole time, you might end up bumping into all your neighbors and ruining everyone's exercise. Thanks for joining us, guys. We're going to have more good stuff, but we're now going to turn it over to our Chinese teacher.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 今天的文章是关于逆时针赛跑的原因。那我们来看文章里的5个题目。第一题写到 However, many athletes protested saying they 空格 to run the opposite way。 题目意思是，然而许多运动员抗议，表示他们空格以反方向来跑。这题考我们动词时态，那4个选项是 train 训练的相关变化，我们要判断找到最适合的时态。那先看到选项 A have trained, B would have trained, C had been trained, D have been trained。 那课文句子前半句是描述过去发生的事，他提到 many athletes protested 许多运动员抗议。那空格所在的子句则是表达抗议的内容，这边应该用到过去式或过去完成式，所以选项 A 和 D 现在完成式就不符合句意了。那选项 B would have trained 是用在假设过去情况，表达说训练并没有发生，这跟语义并不符合。那选项 C had been trained 它是过去完成式，那过去完成式可以表达在过去某个时间点或动作之前就已经完成的经验或动作，在这边符合句意，可以表达说那些运动员受训时一直都是用反方向来跑，所以在这边是正确答案。好，第二题他提到说 As a result, a global standard was set and left turn racing became the 空格。题目意思是，结果全球标准就此制定，左转竞速成为了空格。这题考我们字汇，来看选项 A scheme 是阴谋诡计， B formula 方式公式或是配方， C premise 它表示前提假定，那么 D norm 它表示常态规范或是行为准则。前文提到说，运动员的抗议使得奥运赛跑自1908年起开始以逆时针进行。那根据句意，它应该是要表达结果全球标准就此制定，左转竞速就成为了常态。这边最适合答案会是 D norm。那其他3个选项语义都不符合。第3题他提到说 Over the years, many theories have been 空格 some of which are stranger than others。 题目意思是，多年来人们空格许多理论，其中有一些比其他更奇特。那这边考我们片语动词，来看选项 A brought about， 那 bring about 就可以表达引起导致， B put forward 它表示提出， C carried out， 当我们用 carry out 可以表达执行实施或是落实的意思， D set aside 它表示搁置或者是拨出保留，可能像是拨出金钱时间等等。那从上下文来看，它应该是要表达人们提出了许多理论，在下一个段落也会看到几种不同的说法，所以这边最适合答案就是 B put forward 来表达提出的意思。那文中它这个 have been put forward 在这边是现在完成式的被动语态用法。那其他3个选项语义都不符合。再看到第4题，他说 Still others believe that the Earth's rotation gives left-turning runners an 空格。题目意思是，还有些人认为地球的自转赋予左转跑者空格。这题考我们字汇，来看选项 A advantage 表示优势有利条件， B outlook 表示前景展望或是观点， C indication 表示征兆迹象或是暗示， D objective 表示目标目的。 那这个段落提出了几个为何左转感觉比较自然的说法。那从语义上来判断，最适合答案会是 A advantage 来表达说，还有些人认为地球的自转赋予了左转跑者优势有利条件。那其他3个选项语义都不符合。我们看到第5题的句子，空格 the reason for it。Racing counterclockwise is now a matter of tradition. 题目意思是空格原因为何？逆时针赛跑现在已成为一种传统。那这题考我们片语介系词，来看选项 A except for 表示除了什么之外没有什么什么。B on behalf of 表示代表某人。C with respect to 表示关于点点点。D regardless of 表示无论怎么样，不管怎么样。那语义上来看，最适合答案会是 D regardless of 来表达无论原因为何，不管原因为何，逆时针赛跑现在已成为一种传统了。那其他3个选项语义都不符合。好，那以上是今天的讲解，我们来回顾今天的单字吧。
Competitive. Some students are highly competitive in their efforts to get the best grades. Biology.Hazel has decided to study biology because she loves learning about living creatures. Protest. Reggie protested when his boss assigned him extra work without an increase in pay. Rotation. The rotation of the moon around the Earth takes a little more than 27 days. Explanation. This book provides an extremely detailed explanation of how the human brain works. Stride.With each stride, we moved a little closer to the peak of the mountain.
Well, that brings us to the end of another edition of our program, and please make sure you join us again next time. From all of us here, I am Mike.
I am Sam.
See you next time.